Hey guys, it's Madison, and today I'm going to be doing two things. The first thing is talking about consistency and why it's so freaking hard to achieve consistency in studying a language. And the second thing I'm planning on doing is setting some goals for myself to try to be a more consistent language learner for the month of October. First of all, consistency. Is consistency necessary when learning a language? I honestly think it's not necessary, and I'm kind of proof that it's not necessary because I've never been a consistent studier. I kind of study sporadically when I feel like it. Sometimes I study 30 minutes in a day, sometimes I study hours and hours in a day. Sometimes I go for months barely studying at all. And over the past 11 years, I've managed to learn Korean basically to fluency, although obviously I'm not perfect, as well as a good bit of Mandarin and Japanese. But yeah, even though I just said that I've never been a consistent language learner and I've managed to be relatively successful learning languages regardless, I would like to have a little bit more consistency in my language learning routine. Mostly because I knew that if I actually just devoted a little more time each day or each week to learning a language, I would progress so much more than I am now. And I'm not studying because I'm just too busy. It's just because mostly I'm putting my time in other places. Now I do have basically a full-time job plus some side jobs as well. So obviously I'm not trying to spend, 8 hours a day every single day learning a language, but I would like to at least try to form a little bit more of some sort of habit for trying to learn a language most days. So what I'm planning on doing is for October, I'm going to set specific goals for myself to try and encourage myself to study more consistently in both Korean and Japanese. So I took a few minutes and I wrote down some of the resources that I'd like to use throughout this next month to study more consistently. Because like I said in my last video, I've been very unproductive language-wise in the past month or two, honestly. I've been very sporadic, hardly studied at all. So I'm hoping that I can use this as kind of a big jump in motivation to study more often. Yeah, so starting with Korean, the first physical resource I have is this little book called My Daily Routine in Korean. It is put out by Talk to Me in Korean, and it's not a very big book. And also even on the inside, it's not very wordy. It shouldn't be that big of a deal to do 1 or 2 topics in a day. So I'm hoping to work on this 20 days out of the 31 days in October, if that makes sense. So 20 out of 31 days, I'm hoping to open this up, look at a page or two. The second thing I have here is this novel that I mentioned in my last video as well, 말을 부탁해. It's the novel that I'm currently reading, and I'm hoping to do a close read of around 4 pages per reading session, which generally takes me around 20 minutes. And I'm hoping to do that again for 20 out of 31 days in October. The next thing on my list is this cartoon 한국어. It has Lee Sung-woo and Lee Tae-oh. I'm actually not sure of the exact difference of those, but it's basically like onomatopoeia stuff like that. And you can see it has like a little cartoon with conversations that include the descriptive word that it's covering, as well as basically the meaning, different ways it can appear in like different kinds of words, and then some example sentences, stuff like that. Each word is basically just 2 pages. So it shouldn't be too difficult to like sit down for 5-10 minutes and read one of those topics. And I'm hoping to do this 15 days out of the month. So 15 out of 31, basically every other day-ish, hoping to look through at least one of these. The next physical resource I'd like to work on a little bit is this Your First Hansa Guide. This is another Talk to Me in Korean resource that has been sitting on my bookshelf for a very long time that I'm always excited about like working on in theory, but I just have very rarely actually opened this book. So I'm hoping to work on this. Again, the chapters are very small, or at least the topics are very small. Often it's just 2 pages again. So I'm hoping to open this up and take a look at some Hansa 20 out of 31 days once again. And the final physical resource that I'd like to work on is this Korean Grammar in Use. Again, I showed this in my last study video, and yeah, like I mentioned there, I know a lot of these topics, but there are a lot of like helpful tidbits and like exceptions, when to use it, when not to use it, information that I don't know 100% of. So I'd like to go through these topics, practice them, review them, and see if there's any extra information that I didn't already know. And I'm hoping to do this 15 days of the month. So again, around half of the days. So those are all the physical resources. And then I do have one more goal for Korean, and that is, I guess we'll call it like writing a journal, but basically taking a notebook, and on 10 days at least, I would like to take out a notebook and just write even just like a paragraph about what I did that day, anything interesting that happened, just stuff like that, just to get a little more practice at writing things by hand. The majority of my Korean learning journey has been mostly receptive, either my friends talking to me or watching dramas or listening to podcasts, stuff like that. So my productive skills like writing and speaking are definitely lower than my receptive skills, which is normal, but I would like to specifically practice those receptive skills some. So my goal is to, around every third day or so 10 out of the 31 days, go ahead and write a little bit in Korean just for that little writing practice. So yeah, those are all 6 of the things that I would like to work on for Korean. And then for Japanese, it's a much shorter list. The first one is using Irodori, which is an online, basically textbook resource that is created by the Japanese government or some foundation in Japan, just basically to work on at least one section of that book or some aspect of that book around half the days in the month, so 15 out of 30 days. The second thing for Japanese is using some sort of phone app, either maybe Duolingo or Busuu. I haven't used these apps a lot, but I've been meaning to kind of give them more of a chance. And I figure it's a good way to, if you have like just 5 minutes in your day of dead time, which I often have when I'm teaching, just to open the app and go through one little checkpoint or whatever. It's a good way to get a little bit of Japanese in those dead periods of my day. And I'm hoping to do that for, again, 20 days out of the 31. And the last thing for Japan, or Japanese, is just some sort of like reading practice. I have a couple apps on my phone. I don't remember the names of them off the top of my head, but either one of those apps where you can like read like a short article or a short story, or something online. I think there are some websites that have like JLPT, like reading practice stuff for the different levels, and just kind of going through some of those practices and reading and answering questions. Just some sort of reading activity for Japanese. I'm hoping to do that for, again, around 20 out of the 31 days of the month. So those are my goals. 6 different options for Korean studying things and 3 different options for Japanese studying things. It might seem kind of complicated having all those different goals for the different resources, but this is kind of me just putting my brain on paper. There are some resources that I'd like to use more often throughout the month, and that's why I have a higher goal for those. There are some that I don't need to work on as often. That's why those goals are lower. And this also kind of gives me the option to mix and match what I do on certain days, so I don't get too burnt out doing the same activity every single day of the month. And you'll notice that the highest goal I had for any resource was 20 days in the month. And that's because even for the ones I want to do quite often, or even hopefully every day, I know that I'm working basically a full-time job plus other stuff. And there are occasionally times that I might be visiting my family or seeing friends for the whole day, and I won't have time to work on things for maybe the whole day. And that's okay. Again, I've never been, someone who prioritizes working every single day in the language, nor have I basically ever done that for an extended period of time. And I don't expect that suddenly for 30 days in the month, I'll be able to find time to study every single day. And that's not my priority. I just would want to increase the frequency of my studying routines. But yeah, this is just kind of an experimental challenge for myself. I'm not going to be upset if I don't meet all these goals. This is just, what I'd like to get done. If I don't get everything done, that's totally fine. Or if I find that I need to adjust my goals midway through, then that's also fine. This is just my way of trying to encourage myself to study more often in the month of October. We'll see how it goes from here. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say for this video. So until next time, annyeong.